All right. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, whatever time it is. Hi, how's everyone doing today? Let me know who's here. Let me get into my comments so I can see who's here. Give me a hi if you're here. What are you doing? What are you up to? Hope everybody's ready for a pretty interesting class. I'm pretty jazzed about this one. Really interesting research that I've known about, but haven't really I didn't dive into it until I decided to take on really what I was taking on are all the trendy terms that are out there. And that was the motivation for putting this little webinar together, live stream, whatever you want to call it. And it's now going to, I'm going to announce something toward the end here. So that I'm not going to tell you now, right? Not telling you now. But before I get started, let me just, kind of help myself out. I'm going to use a little bit of my psychodermatology, corneotherapeutic, neuroscientific, neurocosmetic, biophilic, bioactive, functional fragrance. And it's going to help stimulate my neuroimmunocutaneous endocrine network and my HPA access and really make it really ready to go. Jazz hands. Okay. Hi, Andrea. How's it going? A few other people kind of hanging out, waiting to get myself started here. So I am Jim Harrison, in case you didn't know that. And I've been at this for like 30 years. And I'm just obsessed. I've been in every aspect of essential oils, formulation, education, and so much more. So my experience is really diverse, and I have challenges with the way aromatherapy and essential oils are being presented in the world. So I'm constantly trying to bring new information and a different perspective. Today is definitely a different perspective than what normally do. So let me see. Let me kind of. I'm playing around with a lot of different screens, so. It's interesting how I'm doing this these days. Love technology, such a beautiful thing. This is what we're going to be doing today: neuroscience, biophilia, psychodermatology, and functional fragrance. These are new names for an old practice, and what that old practice is it's aromatherapy, right? It's essential oil therapy. It's what we've been doing forever and ever and ever. Amen. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the relationship between these new terms and this old philosophy of working. So let me get you back here. Oh. This is what I said, new names for known function. What we're talking about today is how essential oils work. Now I'm going to be including plant-based extracts, ingredients. My focus is generally skincare, but my approach to skincare is pretty much your overall health and wellness. And so even though I talk skincare, I'm really talking about just an application for overall health. Skincare is unbelievable for, if you have a headache, if you have digestive issues, if you have, liver pain, whatever, skincare is actually a remedy for all of that. And what's cool about it is while you're working on those symptoms that I just talked about, the skincare can actually regenerate healthy cells, and you have really youthful, wonderful looking, healthy skin. So let's look at these new names and the known functions. Neuroscience is something that is being promoted a lot. I see it a lot in the spa industry and the wellness industry. Neuroscience, neuroscientific, neurocosmetic goes along with that if you're talking about some of the new approaches to skincare. And I don't know, what does that mean? It's obviously it you know what it means. It's talking about an interaction with the nervous system. So when we're talking about neuroscience, we're talking about anything that interacts with the nervous system, which is everything, I think. But we're fine-tuning it, and that's what I want to do today. Is I want to show you how we're using the language to take what we already know about essential oils and incorporating into this, the more updated language, which again, neuroscience, neurocosmetics, if you're talking about skincare. Psychodermatology and biophilia. Biophilia, these other words are kind of trendy, where biophilia is really a definition that came from biology. E.O. Wilson, a biologist, I can't remember what year, but it's 1960s, 70s maybe. And E.O. Wilson took the term biophilia, which was already in biology as far as biologic terms, but he popularized it. And the way he popularized it is really understanding what nature is and how it affects us. So biophilia refers to our genetic coding, our genetic desire to be in and with nature. It became more popular through the practice of forest bathing, which is a practice that came out of Japan. Now, forest bathing is a therapeutic practice where, I don't know, if you're in Tokyo or have ever been to Tokyo, it's a very, very congested, busy, stressful city. And the work ethic there is also very stressful. And so high suicide rate and emotional distress and everything else that goes along with that is what a lot of Japanese people were experiencing. So there's a therapist there who started taking people into the forest. The main trees there are the hinoki trees. I'll mention that and talk about that later on here. And in the forest, he was finding that it lowered stress, boost the immune system. Now, when you lower stress, you're also going to boost the immune system because stress compromises your immune system. So boosting the immunity, lowering stress, lowering suicide rate, just helping people be a little happier in their existence in the Tokyo environment. So that's what forest bathing is all about. And the research started bringing the word biophilia out and turning it into a practice or an acknowledgement that when you go into nature, it is healing. We know this. There's a lot going on, biophilic architecture, forest bathing walks, which is all about biophilia. So I'm going to talk about biophilia in relationship to, the topic of today, which is how to understand how these terms fit into what we're already doing with essential oils and plant-based ingredients. So anyway, neuroscience, biophilia, psychodermatology, and functional fragrance. That's one I like, but that's one I'll highlight a little bit more coming up. Functional fragrance. So these are new terms, new definitions, new terminology, new trends, whatever you want to call it. For again, what I've been saying is the known activity of essential oils and plant-based extracts. Okay. What do we know about essential oils? Well, they're functional. That's a nice term for meaning it does something. Yeah, it has a function. I'll explain more detail again. Neuroactive. So when we use essential oils, even just smelling, there's a triggering through the olfactory system, which is going into the limbic system. And even though neurotransmitters are involved, so it releases certain neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, whatever compounds we want to talk about here. But these compounds even interact through cellular receptors, which is a big topic for what I'll talk about today. It's the nervous system. So that is neuroactive, just smelling. I'm going to talk about topical, how that interacts, and even taking them internally, digestive, interesting things there with neuroactivity. Nature healing, which I just talked about, and bioactive. Bioactive is a term that's been became popularized a few years ago, I guess, or maybe longer, when it comes to anything that is active in your biological system, which is everything. Wouldn't everything be bioactive? The reason I say that is because our environment, we're surrounded by chemical compounds all the time, whether you're in nature, in the city, wherever you are surrounded by chemical compounds. These chemical compounds are interacting with your body. And so it's going to trigger biological, physiological activity. So pretty much everything is bioactive. So are your essential oils. So are the plant-based extracts. And this is our conversation. Neuroactive. So this is what I want to start with. this is really the part that in the research I've been doing just lately. Okay, so again, nothing new going on here. Nothing new. It's just the understanding of using a word like neuroactive. It gives us a different perspective. How are we looking at the activity of essential oils? How are we looking at the activity of these, plant-based extracts? So the difference, I might talk about this a little bit more, but in case I forget it, I want to cover it now. Essential oils are volatile compounds, meaning that they evaporate. So there's only certain molecules coming from the plant that can be in an essential oil. When you start getting into plant-based extracts, so we're talking herbal tinctures, supercritical extracts, even absolutes, those get included with essential oils a lot. Anything where you're extracting molecules from the plant. If they don't evaporate, they can occur in all of these other extraction methods. But if it doesn't evaporate, it's not in an essential oil. So I like to differentiate those two categories, even though essential oils are plant-based extracts, right? So the plant-based extracts, one of the main differences, you have speak English, Jim, much larger molecules that are in these plant-based extracts. And so the activity is going to be different. We need to understand the structure. If you get into this as a science and as a practice, the more you know, the better you're going to be. And so these larger molecules, they're also neuroactive. They also have activity. So, there's just so many compounds that we interact with. And it's all about communication. All right. So I'm looking at just defining topical use and inhalation right now, which when it comes to essential oils, that's primarily what you want to do. The herbal extracts, they are used internally, on a regular basis. That's when you buy a supplement as an herbal supplement, you're using it digestively. And so it will interact with the digestive system, but it's also interacting with the body because of the way it's being processed, going through the liver into the bloodstream. And you have your neuroactive, bioactive properties going on. So communication through receptors. This is so important. What really piqued my interest in this was when I first started working with essential oils. Now we're talking a while ago, 30 years ago. And there wasn't a lot of information. I was communicating and became best friends with some of the top people in what's called French aroma medicine. That would be Kurt Schnaubelt and Pierre Franchome and Daniel Penowell. These are the people I studied with. These are the people who developed what we know about aromatherapy and essential oils. And even though I was studying with the masters, there were so many unanswered questions that I had. So I'm starting out and I'm making a blend. Somebody had a digestive issue and I make a blend. Go here, rub this on your belly. So you rub it on the belly. And they go, wow, I feel so much better. It was pretty quick. And I'm thinking to myself, no way. That's placebo. There's no way you're putting something on your skin. It's going through the epidermis, into the dermal layer, into the capillaries. And well, really, you think about that fast, it can't even go into the bloodstream to get to the digestive system. We got to be talking, it has to go through the fat and through the muscle and through everything else to get to the digestive system to work that fast. And that's just not the way it works. It's not possible. So I'm thinking, okay, olfactory system. Yeah. You're smelling it when you put it on. So the olfactory system is going to trigger a response that's going to send a signal to the digestive system. And that's where you're going to have the activity being pretty instantaneous. That makes sense. But I thought there had to be more. So I thought for myself, there has to be some form of communication on the surface of the skin. When the molecules bind with those receptors, they must send a signal that can be very, very quick. You can feel it almost instantaneously because our nervous system just responds and signals to the body very quickly. And this is the way we're designed, and it's a necessity for survival. We have to understand why are we designed the way we are? And the main reasons for this is survival. It's protection. It's the way that we relate to our environment, so we know what's good for us and what's bad for us. So it's communication, okay? So the olfactory system is one way. And then as I developed and started learning more and more and more and more, especially when CBD and the whole cannabis industry came out, we started hearing more about the endocannabinoid receptor system. And so I did some research, and yes, essential oils do bind with the endocannabinoid receptor system. So when you use CBD and you put it on your skin and you get an instant anti-inflammatory response, that is working through your endocannabinoid system, the receptor, the CB1, CB2. TRP channels, that's another receptor. There are many receptor systems, but these are the main ones that I'll be talking about today. And like I've been saying, this is your nervous system signaling. All right, now let's look at the essential oils. And I'm really going to be more specific, not the essential oils themselves. I will mention which oils the molecules that I'm going to be talking about are in. So that's what I'll talk about, the molecules. And beta-caryophyllene, which is in copaiba and in pepper, is a compound that was researched and found it binds with the same receptor. It's a CB2 receptor in the endocannabinoid system that reduces pain and reduces inflammation. Copaiba is a very, very good anti-inflammatory pain-relieving essential oil, as well as regenerative when you use it in skincare, which is binding with another receptor. That's actually an olfactory receptor in the skin. This is also cool. I hope you think it's so cool too. But it's just my obsession and my geekishness comes out when I start talking about this stuff, because I'm just so fascinated by who we are as human beings and the interaction with nature. The beta ionone, which we find mostly in rose oil. It's actually, there are other oils like violet and I think osmanthus, but I don't want to talk about those too much. Those are absolute, so you cannot get essential oils, but those are so highly adulterated most of the time that you really need to know where you're getting those from. But if they're done well, they do contain the ionones, which are responding to an olfactory receptor, the OR5-1E2. And what else did I write down there? It affects regeneration and pigmentation. Pigmentation, we're talking about melanin. And melanin has more function than just, giving you your skin tone. The skin, when you get a tan, when your skin darkens, that's sun prevention or UV damage prevention. But the melanin also affects your immunity and, other functions. So melanin is not just specifically skin color. So the ionones have actually been shown to balance pigmentation, balance skin tone. So that's one of the reasons why rose is such a good essential oil for your skin. Whether it will diminish dark spots is questionable, but because of what we see in the science, without it being specific to that function, I would say, why not give it a try? I have used many essential oil blends that have decreased, darkened spots on the skin. So what else we have here? Patchouli. And in the research, they were talking about patchouli specifically, but when I looked around a little more research, it's the patchouli alcohol compound that, again, is binding to an olfactory receptor. And the olfactory receptors trigger wound healing, meaning that they trigger cell regeneration. So not only for wound healing, these would be good for just general skincare, meaning that when you what skincare is supposed to be about, it's supposed to be the healthy regeneration of skin cells, because your skin is constantly regenerating 30 days or so. And so when you have that regeneration of skin cells, you want the regeneration to be healthy generation, okay, or regeneration. And what it takes to do that is not only stimulating the function of cell regeneration, but also protecting the cells from things that can interfere with cell regeneration, like free radicals. So antioxidants are a really good thing in skincare because it's protecting. But the antioxidants aren't interacting with the receptors. That's done through the patchouli alcohol, the ionones, the beta-caryophyllene. Now, menthol, we all know about peppermint, right? Put it on your skin and it's cooling. Why is it cooling? Because it binds with one of the TRP receptors. What is that? The TRPM8 receptor. And this is another receptor system within the skin. And that receptor, when the menthol molecule, and this is when I talk about receptors, generally when I talk about that in my courses, I talk about like lock and key. The molecule has a certain shape. The receptor allows for only certain shapes. So it's like a lock, the receptor, and a key, the molecule. And if the key fits, boom, it's going to create a reaction. So the menthol is a key that fits this specific TRP receptor. And the response in the body is cooling. So it's triggering that cooling response in the body. And this is why you can't use or shouldn't use and better not use, even though I know a lot of people have done it and go, it worked and it was okay. Babies under 30 months old, not good to use peppermint because the function of peppermint cooling, creating a cooling sensation, it triggers the lungs. So when you go out into cold weather, your lungs will close up in order to keep the heat in the body. Babies under 30 months old, their respiratory system is not quite developed yet. And so in an extreme situation, the menthol, and this is usually with like the vapor rubs, you put too much vapor rub on because your baby's all congested. This is where it has turned into emergency room visits because the baby's lungs shut down and they can't breathe. And there actually have been documented deaths due to mostly the vapor rubs. I don't think there have been any deaths due to peppermint. I'm not sure. But in just my brief research, I didn't find any. But I did find a lot of listing for emergency room visits using too much peppermint or menthol. So just avoid it. Now, if you have a diffuser in the room and there's a little bit of peppermint, misting in the air, it's not going to be an issue. But, there's so many other oils you can choose from. Why use peppermint if there's even a little bit of risk, right? So what's happening here is the menthol is binding to the cold nerve receptor, this TRPM8 receptor, triggering the nerves to create a cooling effect. This is also how peppermint lowers body temperature. And the other function here is an analgesic and the vasoconstriction and the trigeminal nerve. So the trigeminal nerve in the face, that's where it works for migraines. There's a function there. I don't want to get into too much detail there, but the function of how peppermint works on headaches is through this receptor system and actively triggering a response in the trigeminal nerves, which is going to reduce the pain and the symptoms of a migraine. The vasoconstriction, also same thing. That's how it works for preventing a headache or reducing a headache, I guess I should say, huh? Okay, so some other reactive activity or receptor activity. This is really interesting because I'm not one who promotes internal use of essential oil except for very specific reasons. I use internal essential oils often, but I'm using it for a specific reason. One of the main reasons that I don't recommend using the internal use of essential oils is because it's such a waste. You use way too much essential oil for what you can do topically and through inhalation. I have used, in the cases that I have used the internal, is especially for antibacterial. I use it like an antibiotic. And I do, relatively high dose. High dose is one of these random terms that doesn't mean anything. And so I can use anywhere from, 10 drops, 10 drops, 2 or 3 times a day when I have an infection. But I'm not doing that for more than 10 days, and I'm not doing it every day and all the time. I'm going to tell you why it's not a good idea to use the oils internally daily. And it's not because of danger. It's because of waste, okay? So here we have in the receptor system, the gut, brain, skin axis, beta-caryophyllene, So I already mentioned what it does on the surface. Like when you put that on your skin, the surface receptors, which are in the epidermis, they're in the hair follicle, they're in some of the immune cells. The receptors are right in these surface cells. And that's why it's so easy to get to them using essential oils or any topical plant-based extract. So the beta-caryophyllene actually works in the gut. In the gut, you do have olfactory nerve endings and endocannabinoid receptors. So similar, right? So the beta-caryophyllene used internally can work as an anti-inflammatory. And if it's digestive related, this is a time to use essential oils for these functions. You want to reduce inflammation in the digestive tract. Yeah, do a couple drops of beta-caryophyllene. You don't need that much for it to be effective. Menthol, another way you can use peppermint, and this is also analgesic, but peppermint we know works on digestive issues. It actually works through the olfactory system very effectively. You do not have to put it on topically or take it internally to correct digestive issues. But if you do take it internally, it will work through the receptor system in the gut. And these are all the same receptors I talked about on the surface. The linalool that's in lavender, we generally use that through the olfactory system, but there are surface receptors that linalool also binds to. But this is, there's a serotonin, the 5-HT3 receptor. That's the serotonin receptor. That is how linalool works. That's for me topically and again, inhalation. But if you're finding you're having spasms, pain, digestive pain, yeah, an internal way of doing it is going to function, but not always the best way to do it because of this, what's called receptor tolerance. So I always say this, I'm saving it for the last bullet though. The oils or plant-based extracts can lose effectiveness with daily use. The reason is because there's a receptor tolerance. And this also makes sense from us as animals, biological beings in a biological world where our receptors, our communicating system is designed, like I said, to protect us. So as we become exposed to different compounds in the environment, whether we're eating it or doing it topically, the body then goes, oh, okay, this is cool, it's safe, I don't need to worry about this. And the activity can stop because the body is responding like, oh, it's okay. I don't need to keep working every time you put this stuff in my gut or on my skin. So receptor tolerance, you want to be aware of that. And, the TRP receptors, the menthol, clove is also binding with the TRP receptor. It's overuse. And it's hard to say what is overuse. One of the only examples I have of that is using bay laurel, which has the eugenol, which is the compound that smells and is clove. Using bay laurel every day, and this would be neat. The body first responds. So this is sensitivity, where you end up with a sensitivity reaction. You can use an essential oil every day, and then 2 months, 3 months, 6 years later, you all of a sudden have an extreme reaction. You can never use the oil again. It's because at first the body's going, yeah, this is okay. It goes through the immune system, and the body responds in a positive way. The immune system doesn't trigger. But if it starts seeing this compound every day, it starts going, wait a minute, maybe this is bad, and boom, you've got a serious inflammatory response due to the immune response. So that's sensitivity, a little bit different than what I'm talking about here. And the overuse number was, I think it was 6 days, and then stop using the bay laurel. I don't think for most essential oils, I think it can go months. I use a skincare formula. I've been, this is my skincare formula. I use it pretty much every day, but because, I'm in my lab all the time, I make up stuff and I'm always trying different things. So I can easily switch up my oils and what I'm using on my skin. Now, the long-term exposure, that's like overuse. What does that mean? They're talking about CB2 receptors. It just goes, down regulation, reduces tolerance. These are all the different words you can use, but it means it's not going to work as well. Okay. And this especially is true of what you're putting in internally. So I've seen formulas out there that are supplements with essential oils, and people are using them every day. Going, well, yeah, so you're telling me there's going to be tolerance, but it's been working for me every day. Okay. This is the cool thing about essential oils. I can tell you something that I find really good research on and through my experience, but it might not be true for you, because essential oils are just like that. But you never know. And why do you want to have that same activity when you want to really trigger the body into a response? This is another thing about my last bullet point. I'm just going to go to it. Olfactory receptors adapt quickly. That's not the one I want to go to, but when you're smelling something and then all of a sudden you don't smell it anymore, you're sitting in the same room, you go out, you come back in and the smell is there again. That's your olfactory system adapting. So that's also receptor tolerance. This rotate oils regularly. This goes along with eat seasonally. If you've ever heard that as a dietary practice, eat locally, eat seasonally. The eat locally is that the plants produce these compounds that I'm talking about for its own protection. And so the combination of compounds in the plants that are local are built by the plant to harmonize with that environment. The desert environment is very different than where I am in the Pacific Northwest. And so, unless I go over the Cascade Mountains, then I'm in a desert environment. So in that environment, the plants are producing compounds that are specific to harmonizing with that environment. So that's the concept of eat locally. You're going to take in the compounds that are designed by the plant to harmonize with that environment. Eating seasonally really gets to what I'm talking about here. We have seasonal produce, seasonal foods, and this also has to do with switching things up, rotating regularly. That's a natural rotation that's created by nature. Because we do not live in a nature-influenced environment as we should, we need to pay attention to how nature designed the things that we're using. And this is one of those ways you want to switch up your products and the things that you're using on a daily basis. Biophilic, so I explained what biophilia is, but I want to explain the biophilic formulation concepts. I co-founded a skincare company. That was 2001. And when this was, nobody was doing this, okay? There was Dr. Hauschka and a couple other lines that were out there that were considered plant-based. And most of the ones that were natural or claiming plant-based weren't. The way you can tell that is they're white. Skincare is not white. Do I have that listed here yet? Yes, last bullet point. I just gave you the last bullet point. Skincare that's from a plant-based source has color. So my skincare had color. And it also had a natural smell. It had essential oils in there. But if I have olive oil in my formula and I do it minimally refined, the odor of olive oil is going to be in there. So in practice of formulating with plant-based extracts, as a fragrance formulator, you have to consider that your formula for fragrance is including olive oil, shea butter, coconut oil. I actually get coconut oil with the odor gone, because if I don't, it's going to smell like the beach, tropical beach. Everything's going to smell like coconut oil, which is good if you want that. So anything that you put in there that contains the odor of the plant is going to contain the odor of the plant, and it's going to contribute to the odor of your skincare. Color, natural color, right? Take the carrot, the color out of a carrot. You've taken out a main compound that you eat carrots for, the beta carotene, right? Same thing with your skincare. You take the color out, you're taking therapeutic molecules out of your skincare. Why do that? Don't. Skincare, biophilic, plant-based skincare has color. Why did I just say biophilic? Because our genetic coding to be with in nature will be triggered by the color of the natural ingredients. It will be triggered by the odor of the natural ingredients. When I had my skincare, I mean, this is just an example. That's color, right? That's astaxanthin, by the way, red algae. Love to use that. And why am I doing this on my hands when I could be doing it here? Okay, so color. Now, not all of my skincare had the astaxanthin, so it wasn't all that color. Some of it was kind of a golden, a yellow, brownish. And I took these formulas out when we were first starting to get into the market. I take it to people and say, ooh, go plant-based, and it's beautiful and incredible and therapeutic, and you're going to love this. And they look at it and go, because it looks weird. And they smell it because it smells weird. At that time, people were looking for natural. But the way I defined it is people wanted natural, but they wanted synthetic natural. They wanted it to look like they're synthetic. They wanted it to smell like they're synthetic, but they wanted natural. Now, just the idea of natural triggers a biophilic response. So if I wrote natural, plant-based extracts on my white skincare with a nasty synthetic fragrance, the idea of natural will still trigger the emotional effect as well as an immune effect. Maybe not the immune effect, but the emotional, unless the emotional does help the immune system. It's going to trigger that effect. There's going to be a biophilic response. But why waste your biophilic response when you can have a real powerful, for real biophilic response by having real plant-based extracts in your formula? There are two companies that are really popular in the spa market that are all about organic and plant-based. Very, very strong in, we're plant-based. And I was looking at them, and they have color. So that they're following a lot of the rules as far as the labeling and the look. But I just wasn't sure. And as I looked through the ingredients, I had to go a little bit deeper, but I saw mineral colors in there. And that explained why the colors weren't quite accurate for nature. And the whole thing is that, the companies are trying to make it appealing to a mass audience that doesn't understand plant-based. Come on board, everybody. Plant-based is cool. It looks like food, okay? It's just so weird the attitude toward plant-based. Like when you're looking at skincare and it's plant-based and it smells plant-based, but you freak out. If I told you, here, this is a really great meal, and you smelled it and looked at it, you're going to respond differently. Perception is everything. Biophilic is powerful in this response of triggering just that emotional immune response, but use real plant-based products, okay? Now, this is the hinoki. I told you I'd explain a little bit about hinoki. And hinoki, the tree, we have the essential oil from the tree. And they did some research because they wanted to know, was it being in nature or was it the compounds being released by the trees, which when you smell nature, you're smelling the essential oils that come from the tree. So in the hinoki forest, you're smelling the hinoki. Once we extract it, it's hinoki essential oils. You know what they call essential oils? When it's in the atmosphere in nature, they call it phytoncides, which is a name I'm just not comfortable with. Phytoncide. So phyto is plant. I like that. Side is poison. So what they're calling these compounds are plant poison. Now, the reason they do that is because the original research, when we're looking at from the forest perspective, the biology perspective, the plant compounds were mainly identified as protecting the plants from herbivores, pests, things that are going to damage the tree by eating it or creating disease. So the compounds started being called phytoncides. I like to call it essence when I'm in the forest. Once it's distilled, we call it essential oils. So the hinoki from the tree, from the forest, from the hinoki forest, they took people into a laboratory type setting. It was actually in this one study, it was a hotel room. I don't know why, but hey, cool. Nice lab setting. And they diffused the hinoki. They found that they got the same response that they had from people going into the forest. It lowered stress, boosted immunity. I mean, other factors as well, but those are the main things. So we know that from the perspective of neuroscience and essential oils, what is the function? Similar to going into nature, it's triggering response receptors. I didn't look up what receptors specifically hinoki responds to, but I know it's through the olfactory system. The olfactory system is very intricate on the way that it works. Nerve ending, so it has to be lock and key. And whatever lock the hinoki molecule key fits, it's triggering a response that goes through the limbic system, and then that's signaling the body for that neuroscientific or neuroactive response. Here, I already said this, plant-based ingredients have color. My berry seed oils are brownish reddish, so it does add color to my formula. The herbal extracts, some tinctures are brown and can add that color. Supercritical extracts are something that falls in the category of essential oils, but they are not essential oils. What these supercritical extracts are, it's supercritical carbon dioxide, and it pulls out the same molecules as that are in the volatile molecules from essential oil, but it also brings out larger molecules. So you get deep color. The astaxanthin, the red algae, that is a supercritical extract because it's pulling out what's called astaxanthine, which is a carotenoid similar to beta carotene. Now you can get beta carotene and a red color in sea buckthorn supercritical extract. So these compounds also bind to the receptors, triggering a response, but these molecules are actually more active, and this is when you're eating food, when you're eating your carrots, when you're eating your berries. These are really, really powerful molecules that give you all that antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, cell protective, when they talk anti-cancer type molecules. That's where all the magic is the larger molecules that aren't in essential oils. Excuse me. Psychodermatology. Coming up in November, there's a scientific conference. I'm going to post it on my LinkedIn page. I'll also post it through YouTube. For you guys looking at me on YouTube, hey, YouTubers, subscribe, like. You LinkedIn guys, follow, like. All that kind of stuff, all that good stuff. Hey, my middle of the thing promotion. Loved it when I get that in. Anyway, psychodermatology. I was just talking about psychodermatology, which is psycho, meaning that you're working from a psychological perspective, emotion, psychotherapy. Dermatology refers to the science of skincare, taking care of skincare. Now, the psychodermatology is actually a term that refers to practitioners who have a psychology degree and a dermatology license. Not too much of that in the spa industry. My talk that I did, that I'll post this 5th annual scientific aesthetic conference. I can't remember the exact name, which I should have remembered. Last year I did it on psychodermatology. This year I'm actually going to do it on essential oil absorption into the skin. This is going to be included in that in more detail, but really looking at how essential oils interact by absorbing and getting into your bloodstream through surface application. So in psychodermatology, it's emotional use of skincare, which again, is what I've been doing for a really long time. Every time you use skincare, there's an emotional factor. I have a couple of blogs and I think I did some things on my LinkedIn post. You can find more information on the emotional relationship in skincare and how to actually create skincare that is emotionally soothing, which is what psychodermatology is going to be all about. So we're talking about the interaction of emotions and skin health. Now, emotions are damaging to your skin. It can prevent a healthy lipid barrier. So it prevents some of the compounds that form your lipid barrier. And then you have a compromised lipid barrier. When you have a compromised lipid barrier, microorganisms can get in, eczema, psoriasis. These are the things that get triggered from a compromised lipid barrier. And so when we look at preventing that and doing it from the practice of psychodermatology, we want to work on the emotions. Okay, I have my outside, inside out method. You want to do your analysis before you do your treatments, because if somebody comes in with a symptom, You're not treating the symptom, you're treating the person with the symptom. I don't know how many times I've said that or written that, but a lot, because that's so important when you're using essential oils and plant-based extracts. So stress, trauma, emotional states, this is what you want to find out about the person. And there's so much to it. That's why I have, instead of beauty inside out, which a lot of people talk about, you want to start, what's going on out here, right? You need to know all the factors out here and then how they internalize that. The same situation, two people respond to it differently. You can have two different reactions, two different symptoms. So this is what you want to be aware of in the practice of psychodermatology. Treating the skin through the nervous system. So we're talking about receptors. Linalool is probably one of the best examples because linalool is known to calm the nervous system. There are a lot of other oils too. I talk about Virginia cedarwood a lot. And when I put Virginia cedarwood into my acneic formula, it increased the effectiveness. The reason is because a lot of people have breakouts due to stress, because stress causes inflammation and all the other factors that are what a cause of acne is. The autonomic nervous system is an important factor in this. The autonomic nervous system, when you're in fight or flight, it raises heart rate, decreases the breath, kind of stops the digestive system from functioning properly. All of these things will affect the skin. So the reason I add Virginia cedarwood, it has a compound in it called cedrol. And cedrol, the research on it, it says it triggers parasympathetic activity, part of the autonomic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is when we're active. Hypersympathetic is the fight or flight response. Parasympathetic is what's called rest and digest. So when you smell the Virginia cedarwood, you go into a more relaxed state. It slows down or reduces or eliminates the fight or flight response, reduces all of the responses that you get from the fight or flight response, and helps the body to regenerate and heal. So not only that, but the cedrol and other compounds in the Virginia cedarwood are also really good topically for skin health. And I haven't looked it up, but likely similar receptors to what we've already talked about. So by dealing with psychodermatology, which is just, if you're using plant-based, you're creating a positive emotional effect. That's psychodermatology. So biophilia is a piece of psychodermatology. Neuroscience, neurocosmetics, is also factors in to psychodermatology. Isn't this nice? The NICE network. Neuroimmunocutaneous endocrine network. We are nothing but a series of a communicating system, a network that is constantly speaking to itself through the whole body. This is really part of what neuroscience is starting to talk about, because it's not only skincare and essential oils and things like that, herbology, but neuroscience is even mind-body healing. So meditation, manifestation. There's the trying to think of the name. If you want to live forever, Asprey, bulletproof coffee guy, he talks about this a lot. Functional medicine, all of these things are neuroscience, because when it comes right down to what is actually happening when you do these practices, is it's functioning through the nervous system primarily, and it's creating a balance in the body. Now, part of the network that we're dealing with, actually, like what I just said, it involves every practice. So the nervous system, neuro, immune system, immuno, excuse me, cutaneous, that's skin, endocrine, that's hormones. This needs to be in balance. If we're talking about skin health, it needs to be in balance. If we're talking about the nervous system, it needs to be in balance. Anywhere where the system is out of balance creates an imbalance in the whole system. This is what holistic is all about. So we want to know that skin is not separate from all this. Every time you apply an essential oil or skincare, now that I've talked about receptors, there's activity, and that activity through the receptor system is going to trigger a response through the neuroimmunocutaneous endocrine network. Essential oils, as I have always talked about, and this gets back to that new words for old function. I've always talked about essential oils and its function through the NICE network. I like this one, functional fragrance. Okay, what is functional fragrance? Essential oils have always been functional fragrance, but let's put it into perfumery. Okay, so the natural, and I got the little, because natural perfumery isn't so natural. I'm very, I don't want to say dismissive, but I like to challenge what's natural in natural perfumery. For me, when I do something I would call a perfume, it's essential oil, all essential oil. Essential oils with absolutes and supercritical extracts. One of the things that happens in natural perfumery is they're a little more flexible about getting adulterated oils because they need consistency in the fragrance. You don't get consistency from nature. And so when you're doing essential oils, absolutes, and the supercritical extracts, it's not always going to be exactly the same fragrance not because of the process, the distillation or the supercritical extraction method. It's because the plant is going to be different because it's in nature. It's harmonizing with the climate of that season as it develops. So natural perfumers are okay with a little bit of adulteration, meaning they add stuff. Now it can be natural compounds, it's still natural and still okay. But for me, especially when we're talking about functional, I want all of the compounds in exactly the way that they occurred when they were taken from that plant. So the absolute, which is a solvent extraction, whatever came out of that, don't change it. The essential oil, at the end of the distillation, whatever came out of that, don't change it. Don't add anything. There's a molecular balance that I feel is extremely important from the work that I do. So I'm not saying that natural perfumes are there's nothing negative about them, but just understand what they are when they're using adulterants and isolates. So they'll put, I talk cedrol and Virginia cedarwood. It's not the greatest smelling compound for perfumery, but perfumers will take individual isolated compounds like linalool acetate, which creates lavender. And instead of using the whole plant, they just use one compound. Smells good, but for them, it smells good, but it's not what I do. But if you look at it from functional, what they're looking at from the perfumery and essential oil or natural perfumes is that those compounds do have receptor activity, so they have a neuroscientific reaction. So they're doing something. They're doing function. Now, what I find entertaining about this word when people in aromatherapy are using it is it's called aromatherapy. It's functional fragrance, isn't it? So we didn't need a new word, but hey, it's cool. We're going to do it. It's, all of my blends are functional fragrance. Actually, when I started doing perfumery for, as far as, symptomatic or related to any kind of imbalance in the body, I was calling it fragrance therapy. And that's actually olfactory therapy. There's so many words for the same thing. So, hey, functional fragrance, we're going to use that for olfactory therapy and for aromatherapy and for fragrance therapy. And now functional fragrance is how the winning word for this week applies. So what we're talking about is scent that does something. When we talk about the olfactory system, we're talking about scent that does something. You know what? Synthetics do this. Synthetic fragrances have therapeutic activity. And a lot of that is due to perception. Some of it's due to emotional memory. So if you have a positive memory to a perfume that a parent or a loved one wore as a child, and then you smell that as an adult, it's going to trigger that love, that feeling. It could be an oxytocin release. And that's therapy, right? with a synthetic formulation. So all scent has an effect on us emotionally. So all scent can be therapeutic, nowhere near as good as the molecular complexity of essential oils. But don't dismiss synthetics as having therapeutic function. What I do when I formulate is I'm looking at limbic system response. Here again, I say the more you know, the more effective and the more precise your blending and your formulations are going to be. So when you're in the limbic system, dealing with the limbic system, you may not know everything, but when you know and have a good source of information, you can anticipate certain reactions. And when you anticipate those certain reactions, you can formulate around that, even if it's not specific. You can still formulate for this neuroscientific response through the limbic system. Because again, receptors. This is the way the body communicates. Lock and key. So this is also, I'm saying how you build emotional, modern emotional and physical fragrance therapy. So that functional therapy, yeah. It's a good word, doing what we know about essential oils. So what I want to do here is just kind of go over what I was just talking about and how this creates precision with neuroscience, nature, functionality. We're looking at the receptors, the NICE network, and the HPA excess. Ooh, have I not overwhelmed you enough? I just added another word. That's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which is similar in how we define it as the NICE network, where we're looking at a network response in the body. So it's through the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenals. I am going to be talking about that in another course that I have coming up. So again, the more you know, the more you understand, it's going to help guide your precision in your essential oil formulations and even your application, okay? And along, plant-based extracts. You want to select what works, what works, where it works. The more you know about receptors and olfactory and digestive, the more precise, again, you're going to be. And then why it works. You don't always know why. Why is an interesting terminology, because what happens with why is the I don't know factor, and that's okay, especially if you're in tune enough and you can repeat things even if you don't know why it worked, right? But the more you know about the whys, this receptor science is a lot out there, helps, really does help. The holistic essential oil triad, which is a system I developed talking about the olfactory pharmacology, which is about cell receptors, and metaphysical responses of oils. All these three things happen at one time. When you understand that, you're able to plug them in to this, how it works, why it works, when it works, all of that. The more you have your knowledge engaged in that function, the holistic essential oil triad, again, more precision, more effective use of essential oils. All of this improves outcomes. If you're a spa therapist, wellness therapist, it definitely elevates the client experience, because it's not only about the reactions or the results therapeutically, symptomatically. It's about the experience during the whole process. Application can be a method which creates an experience. When you create an experience, you're also creating an emotional memory through the fragrances. And this is why retailing is so important if you're in the spa industry. I have something coming up, and it's my first live online course. And I'm doing it, kind of pulling out some trendy words. I dropped one of them, neurocosmetic aromatherapy. So this is going to be about skincare. But again, I said this much earlier in my talk here. When I'm talking about neurocosmetic and skincare, I'm talking about the whole body health. If it's your liver or digestive system that's messing up your skin, through skincare, I can address that. So that's going to be part of this class. I'm going to be starting this the first week in August. That's really soon. I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to develop this course. And because it's in a way, it's going to be my beta course, I'm going to offer pretty big discount on this one. So what the QR code is for is to go sign up for my email. That's where you're going to find out what's going on. And wait, I need to go over to this slide here because I want to do that. Wait, I'm going to take my slide. Well, let me give you back that make sure you got that QR code. I'm going to leave that up for a minute. Look at all these things I got cluttering up my screen. What I want to do here is send you to my website, which get on my email list. Then I'll notify you. If you're on my email list, you will get the discount price for that, because I'm going to do an early bird, and then I'm going to discount the early bird for anyone that's on my email list. If you want to just email me directly, that's at support@jimharrison.com. And what else can I tell you about all this? I can tell you a lot. There's so much to go over in what I'm going to put into this class. There's my website if you want to get onto my website. And this is just me without anything cluttering the screen. Hey, cool. I've really, 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 really enjoyed doing this presentation. I was jazz hands, putting this course together. And as I was doing it, I was also developing what I'm going to put into the course that I have coming up. So it's going to be a 4-week course, 2 hours each day. I haven't specifically decided which day I'm going to do, but I did a poll and it looks like Thursday morning at 9 a.m. here in Pacific time. Let me see. But what about you guys? You got any questions here? Jazz hands. Yeah. Jazz hands. That was an Andrea. She was kind of acknowledging that I actually know what jazz hands are. Bob Fosse, Here, if you haven't seen that movie about Bob Fosse, I can't remember what it's called. All That Jazz. Cool movie. Really old, but cool movie. Any questions? You guys got any questions? Because, hey, I'll answer anything that you want me to answer. If you don't have any questions, I think we've hit our time. Do get on my email list so that I can send you a discount code for the discount that's going to be happening. This course, like I said, it's going to be my beta. So I am offering at a lower cost than what it's going to be once I start doing this on a regular basis. I've just found so much cool information. I didn't talk much about the herbal extracts, those larger molecules. I talked mostly about the essential oil compounds, but there's a lot of research on the molecular targets. It's actually a book. This book here called Molecular Targets, this is mostly about herbs and spices. It covers a lot of the larger compounds. Text me or DM me or whatever you want to do and I'll send you the name of that book if you're interested. I talked to one of the authors of the book, or they're more editors, and really interesting stuff on how when we communicate topically with the oils. So I don't think I have any questions, either that or I'm not seeing them right now. If you're on LinkedIn, again, go ahead and do the whole subscribe, like. If you're here on, YouTube, subscribe, like. LinkedIn is follow, right? I should know all that stuff. I'm supposed to be really good at promoting myself. I don't want to promote myself. I just want to tell you guys to show up because I just love sharing this information. I've been doing it for a really long time. If you have anything that you want to know about, again, just get in contact with me. And I do one-on-ones. So if you want to have private either coaching or courses, if you want me to come to your spa, if your resort is in a really nice place, I do the hard work. I will show up and do a retreat for, 5, 10 month, whatever you want me to do. But I think that's it for now. I really appreciate everyone being here. Thank you so much. And I will see you on the next one.